The Soviet Union was a thriving communist empire, and they sought to rule the world. Unfortunately, the state collapsed in 1991. So what caused this collapse? The major reason was because of Mr. Gorbachev's reforms on the Soviet Union. His policies of his reorientation of Soviet strategic aims contributed to the end of the Cold War. Mr. Gorbachev introduced these reforms that he hoped that it would improve the Soviet economy. In the 80s, the Soviet Union entered an economic downturn, which led the state to the edge of collapse. Unfortunately, with these reforms, the Soviet Union entered depression and runaway inflation, which led the Soviet Union to collapse. Another major reason was because of the Afghanistan War. In 1979, the government of Afghanistan asked the Soviet Union to help take down the rebels. The Soviet Union agreed and sent troops to Afghanistan. However, the U.S. supported the rebel groups to prevent the expansion of Soviet influence. The Soviet Union had spent too much money on Afghanistan, which bankrupted the state, and was about to collapse. The Soviets left Afghanistan in 1989. The Soviet Union had lost so much power when they lost most of Eastern Europe in 1989. The reason why was because the government did not send enough soldiers to places like Ukraine, Poland, Belarus, and Romania to strengthen the regime in those countries. People gathered and started to protest against the government for freedom and independence. The anti-communist protesters stormed in Poland, continued in Hungary, and then in East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, and other countries. These events were the 1989 revolutions. Many refugees have escaped from their countries because of the violence. Many soldiers and civilians were killed, and many people were arrested. As the protesters got out of control, the Soviet Union was so bankrupt that they had a hard time to control their territories. They did not have enough resources, so they had to abandon Eastern Europe. The Soviets were very unlucky. With the loss of Eastern Europe, their economy became very unsustainable. The United States did not really respond to these revolutions, but they did welcome the refugees to their countries and supported them. 2 years later, on December 25, 1991, the red flag lowered for the last time over the Moscow Kremlin and was replaced with the blue, white, and red flag. Earlier in that day, Mr. Gorbachev resigned from the office and gave all his power to Boris Yeltsin, the first president of new independent Russia.